Hello and welcome to our viewers to yet another episode of Two to Tango. Today's episode takes a cue from the plethora of questions that we get across the multiple videos that we've shared on YouTube regarding the MBA profiles, the MBA colleges, the admissions, and especially talking about the one-year MBA. We have received a lot of questions on profiles and whether those profiles are good enough for an MBA from a premier B school. And that's the question we're trying to address in this video.
And to answer it in a very short way, all profiles have a good chance to get selected. And if that sounds too good to be true, let me explain. I think one thing we should remember is post working 5 to 6 years, when you decide to do a one-year MBA, you can't just go back and change your profile. It's just not possible. So the focus should be that given your profile, how are you trying to sell your profile to the customers, which are the college in this case?
Absolutely. And as Sapta mentioned, it's all about selling because remember, it works like a marketplace. Just as you are looking at the best ROI for your MBA, on the other side, you have a college which is also looking to invest in the right candidate. But that right candidate should add value to the course, to the alumni cohort, as well as the brand of the college overall.
So the main question comes, how does a college evaluate whether the candidate is a right investment or not? Now, one thing that a college typically believes is that the past performance of a candidate is a good reflection of his or her future performance. And that's why there is so much focus on the profiles itself. So a college would really like to understand, for example, whether you come from a good college during your engineering or your graduation days. Whether you have a work experience in a leading organization or a fantastic GMAT score, because all of these criteria helps in filtering the candidates. However, before you get disappointed, let me tell you one thing. All of these are tiebreakers, but they are not deal breakers.
Absolutely. And if you are confused whether you are in the brackets of tiebreakers or deal breakers, we've tried to simplify it for you. And the way we are simplifying it is that we have identified 3 major criteria that influences your selection into a college. These 3 major criteria you might have heard across the various videos, but what we have tried to do is to try to demystify and simplify these criteria, which a college surely will look at when selecting you as a future prospective candidate in their college.
So the first criteria is diversity. And before we kind of block it under a gender, a sexual orientation, or a background that get disappointed that, I don't belong to the diverse class, we need to understand that the diversity that the colleges are looking at is a diversity of thoughts and opinions.
Absolutely, very vital point. And I think it's important to understand why is this diversity of thoughts and opinions important. If you look at it, colleges and prestigious colleges, these MBA courses, they are primarily taught through peer learning, case studies, projects where you have people from various walks of life coming in and putting in their thought process. The whole idea here is, and the whole idea of the teaching faculty is to moderate the discussion and make it more richer and more holistic, where people from different walks of life, different experiences can pour in their thoughts. And the moment those thoughts come from different backgrounds, different thoughts of opinions, you'll automatically see that the result of those teachings are far, far better. And that is why it is very, very important. You need to have diversity of thought and opinion.
Exactly. And so, if you belong to what we call a typical profile, which is, engineering from a normal college, then an IT services industry, how do you exhibit your differentiation? So it can be, for example, on-site, which is a global experience, that you have, or maybe a CSR activity that you have done, and a lot of people kind of do not give a lot of value to it, but understand that also kind of starts talking about your thought process, which kind of differentiates you. Or maybe you have worked on a startup or an idea, and no matter if it failed, but it shows that you have taken the urge to kind of do something, from individual or anything else. For example, you probably would have run a marathon. Anything which distinguishes or differentiates you from the masses is what you kind of need to call out. Now, on the other hand, if you are from an industry which is less represented, such as say an advertisement or a core industry, I think you need to know that while your diversity sets you apart, but at the same time the college also starts thinking that whether they can place you or not, and what you need to prove to the college, that the skill sets that you have learned in your niche job are also applicable in the IT world as well, or the world where most of the recruitment takes place. So the college don't have to fret about your placements.
Very true. And I think, I can relate that to with an example of my own self, right? I came from a manufacturing industry, a steel industry background prior to my MBA. And I think it's important to understand that how do you sell yourself in terms of your experience, right? The way I was able to sell it, that my experience in the manufacturing, in the core steel industry, was equally richer as compared to something which we normally see it, say the typical IT sector, right? It was equally richer. I had experiences which spanned across managing people who were laborers, all the way to managing the senior management, which was the span of my experience across managing people. And also, I was able to sell the transferable skill of say project management, of people management, of conflict management. It's very important to talk in the words and in the language that the college and the people who are interviewing you or reviewing your profile, that they can understand. And the moment you do that, your richer experience becomes relevant to any industry that you might join after your MBA. So that brings us to a very important second criteria that we want to address, and that is all about the clarity of doing MBA. While we discussed about how you can sell your prior experience and make it more, talk about transferable skills, etc. A very important, and how much ever cliched this question might be, the clarity of doing MBA is a very, very pertinent question. Because remember one thing, if you don't have clarity, if you cannot rationalize your MBA decision, it's very difficult that you will be able to convince your college to take you as a future prospective candidate. So this clarity of doing MBA is the second criteria, which is very, very important to address.
And that's absolutely right. And if you look at it, the answer to it is also pretty cliche. Particularly if you're from a project management background, it's like you are in point A in your career, you need to go to point B, and you have to convince yourself and the college that the MBA is the best means to bridge that gap between the 2 points in the timelines that you have decided for yourself. So if you can look at this example, it's probably a very easy example, but to answer that, you have to do a lot of deep dive within yourself. And the clarity therefore comes from the why. And if you look at it, generally, if you are deciding for an MBA at around 30 years, you will generally have or fall into one of these two buckets. One can be you have reached an inflection point in your current industry, you are hitting a glass ceiling, and you want to do something diverse. Or the second bucket would be that you are or you want to continue in the industry that you are doing great, but you now want to have a broader playing field. You want to know about the business of that particular industry and see how you can zoom to the senior leadership. And if I can kind of talk about my example, I belong to the first category. So when I was working as a design engineer in NTPC, I realized that I was doing a decent job, but was I the best civil engineer in NTPC? And will I be able to have the topmost role a civil engineer can in that industry in the next 3 years? The answer to it was probably not. I knew it that I wasn't that good enough, and the skill set that I have was applicable in a different kind of an industry. And that's when I decided that if I have to achieve if I have to go into an industry where my skill sets can be used better within a span of another 3 to 4 years, because I was already 30, I thought that MBA was the best way to make that career shift. And fortunately, investing 1 year into that MBA has paid rich dividends, because I am currently working in a completely different industry, in a finance industry, and doing project management. But that core skill sets of NTPC is definitely brought in, but then that MBA has given me those additional skill sets, and I was able to achieve that because I was very clear right at the start what is it that I want to do after this degree.
Yep. So this brings us to the last and one of the most important criteria that we call career spikes in your profile. Now, it's very important for us to understand that while the college looks, to give admits to individuals who have displayed, leadership and sparks in their journey, it is very much evident, and it is very much acceptable that, across whatever, the generic profile that you have of, right, starting from your college all the way to your career, various roles, etc., sustaining brilliance would not have been possible, right? But what is important is, did you have the right spikes that you can sell? And that can be an indicator of the potential that you have of any of the future performance that the college can then anticipate, right? It is very, very important to have those crests and peaks so that people can understand that you have, maybe because of a different, environment that you've had, but at least you've shown that potential. And I can corroborate this particular point with my own experience. I came from manufacturing industry, as I said, and people have a very different perception when I talk about steel industry. It's a very different industry. But when I talked about having single-handedly handled a project in a far land in Turkey, right, and managed some of the most critical implementations of my project, that actually showed my capability to handle a cross-cultural team. People, we've always worked in India, so that was a good selling point. And if you see, that performance probably was a potential of something that I'm actually doing today, managing cross-cultural teams in a global MNC. So that is what is the most important factor about your career spikes in your profile.
And if you try to understand what is the purpose of a P school's existence, what makes them successful, it's the alumni. It's whether they have been able to churn business leaders who are kind of leading businesses, big organizations in 5-10 years down the line. But it's very unlikely that a college can transform someone into a leader in 1 year. Like, it's not a magic wand. So it's important that the college looks at those streaks of leadership, those streaks of brilliance in you, which can make the college understand that given the right environment, the college can churn a business leader out of you. So you might be working in a PSU, but you might have ran the Mumbai Marathon being a chain smoker, and you can you can give a story about that. Or you might have managed construction in a Naxalite prone areas, or you might have written a novel which did not sell well with someone you did not met in real life. And if you feel all of these are fictionalized, well, it's me. So what I'm trying to say out here is, how do you kind of explain your mundane experience, your career experience, or the choices that you've made in life into the career spikes? How do you do that storytelling to convince the colleges that you have embarked on a journey, and no matter whether you have been successful or not, but you have embarked on a journey that you decided that you are going to do something different, which kind of talks about your leadership skills, your values, and shows the college that there are spikes or potential spikes in the past, which is a good reflection that there will be potential spikes in the future as well.
Absolutely. And I think one thing to add to that, Sapta, is people need to understand it is their story. It is exactly their story. So don't look at your story with somebody else's lens. Look at it with your own lens, and you will actually find those career spikes that Sapta and me mentioned.
So just as Dave mentioned, it is your story. So you need to understand that the key is to spend time with yourself. The key is to understand yourself and deliberate your experiences and your decisions. Now, we generally look into the hard evidences of a GMAT score, the degrees from good engineering colleges, or good colleges across the country, or the branded organizations. And all of these are very easy to quantify. And all of these kind of tell the spikes in your career to the admission committee, but they also don't look into the finer aspects that make who you are. And you have to exhibit, or you can be able to, or you should be able to exhibit those career spikes, those diversity, those clarity of your MBA if you look inside and understand what's your motivation, what's your story. So remember this, there it's not a magic bullet. It's just three things that you need to sit down, take a piece of paper and write down. What is your diversity? Not anyone else's, not in the dictionary terms of diversity, but what is your diversity? What is your reason to do an MBA? And finally, what are your career spikes? If you unravel those three questions, that's what you are. And that's what you need to exhibit to the college to kind of show a fitment between three things: you, your ambitions, and the college, how it can help bridge these two and make a complete fit.
Absolutely. And I think to wrap up, remember one thing, it is honestly a marketplace. It is not about customer experience anymore. It is all about customer delight. The way you look at your MBA, the college looks at you. So it has to be a perfect synergy. Hope the questions and the items that we have discussed in this video are helpful, and they help you make and create a better story for yourself, and you can outsell your profile against the amount of competition that you have in the market. And especially hope this is useful with the admission processes starting for the next academic year across all the B schools in India and abroad. If this was useful, do feel free to drop in your comments, ask more queries. The reason we made this video is all because we were asked these questions on our YouTube videos. The more you ask, the more we will know what to come back with, and what the viewers want to hear and want to understand from our experiences.
So, it's like this, Dave. Let me just pitch in. It's like this.
Yeah.
Just like we are talking about the symbiotic relationship between a college, your story. It's also a symbiotic relation between our viewers and us. You ask the right questions, we can make the right video for you.
Absolutely. I think very spot on the Sapta that you mentioned that. Absolutely, it is a it's a synergy that can only work with when both of the people help out and make this a success. It has been a success till now, and I'm sure the viewers will keep us motivated and help us with their queries and questions. Well, with this we will sign off, and hope this is useful. Feel free to subscribe and to like the video and share it with families and friends. With this we sign off. This is Sapta.
This is Dave.
And we are
Tuned to